throughout Jesus' ministry, what was the one thing that he regularly did, right? He would leave, right?
To rest.
Go and rest, go and pray, go and have solitude, go, even for 40 days, right? And he's God. So if God needed that, right, as a human, maybe we do too.
All right, let's do this. Welcome everybody listening today. If this is your first time, I want to welcome you. If you're listening again, I want to welcome you back. And as always, I just ask you that you would rate and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out a lot. By us, I mean Ordinary Men, the ministry. It's a way that we can advance the kingdom and cast some vision and such for the organization. So I just thank everybody for listening. And if you're watching, we're actually videoing this podcast, Kevin, which is pretty, it's our second video recording. So that'll be on YouTube, so you guys can check it out there as well.
That was a surprise to me, I should mention. Total surprise.
Yeah, his face was not necessarily a happy face when you found out.
It's fine.
But you just tell people things like that once they get here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that way you couldn't say no.
It's
too late to say
hours
no.
on my hair.
Yes. Yeah, if you're watching, you would know he doesn't have any hair. If you're not watching, he has no hair.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, hey, today's topic, I got to pull up my book here. If you're watching, it's kind of embarrassing. We're going to be talking on a book. We'll try not to be too ridiculous about referencing it.
That's a lot of notes.
Yeah. I mean, this is really ridiculous. All the tabs, as if it was going to help me in this podcast, but now I don't have no clue what tab is what. But anyhow, I just want to tease this with, because some of you will be listening right now and be like, I don't have time to listen. I'm too busy to listen. So, and this is on the elimination of hurry. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's a book that Kevin and I both read. And so I just want to tease a couple things, and maybe if somebody thinks they're too busy to listen, maybe hear this and you'll stick with us. The first one is a quote from Rolsheiser.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. But he says, it's not that we have anything against God, depth, and spirit. We would like these. It's just that we are habitually too preoccupied to have any of these show up in our radar screens. We're more busy than bad, more distracted than non-spiritual, more interested in movie theater, the sports stadium, and the shopping mall, and the fantasy life they produce in us than we are in church. Pathological busyness. That's created. Pathological busyness, distraction, and restlessness are major blocks today within our spiritual lives. So as we talk about this Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, it's a book we read. That's what we're going to talk about today. And then I just also want to read this. It's a little longer intro than I normally do, but I'm going to read the 10 symptoms of hurry sickness. And so if you're listening to this intro and you can say yes to 5 of these, then you have to continue listening. You can't make the excuse that you're too busy, because you probably are, but you have to listen. So number 1, you're irritable. You get mad, frustrated, or just annoyed way too easily. Number 2, you have hypersensitivity. All it takes is a minor comment to hurt your feelings, or a grumpy email to set you off, or a little turn of events to throw you into an emotional funk. You have restlessness. When you actually do slow down and rest, you can't relax. You have workaholism? Yeah, workaholism. You just don't know when to stop, or worse, you can't stop. You have emotional numbness. You just don't have the capacity to feel another's pain. Out of order priorities. You feel disconnected from your identity and calling. You're always getting sucked into the tyranny of the urgent, not the important. Number 7, lack of care for your body. You don't have time for the basic 8 hours of sleep, exercise, health, and such. Escapist behavior. When we're too tired to do what's actually life-giving for our souls, we each turn to our distractions of choice: overeating, over-drinking, binge-watching Netflix, browsing social media, surfing the web, looking at porn. Name your preferred cultural narcotic. Number 9, slippage of spiritual disciplines. If you're anything like me, when you get over busy, the things that are truly life-giving for you and your soul are the first to go. And number 10 is isolation. You feel disconnected from God, others, and your own soul. So we're about to get into this podcast, but I would just say, if you say yes to 5 of those 10, unfortunately I say yes to many more of those, then you have to listen to today's podcast, because there are solutions to this busy life. Well, hey, Kevin has been in my most recent Ordinary Men's group, and that was awesome. I was really pumped when he said yes to doing that. And he has committed to leading his own Ordinary Men's group. So he's now going to be a leader in Ordinary Men. That is super exciting. It's always amazing to invest in someone's life and then see them take hold of the vision that God has given us and run with it themselves. And so he's going to use Ordinary Men as a platform to disciple others in his life. And so I'm excited to partner with him on that for sure. Kevin's a father, a husband. He's a local businessman. We actually share that in common. He runs a building business, remodeling and new home construction, which obviously I'm very familiar with. And it's called Holy Cross Builders. If you guys are in the Vale area, look him up.
There you go.
Maybe give him some business. But I love that name because when I first moved here, I really didn't know. I thought it was just like a way to say that you were Christian, which is probably true too.
Sure.
I'm sure it has two meanings.
It does, yeah.
But if you're listening and you're not from the Colorado area, Holy Cross is, explain it. What is Holy Cross?
Yeah, the 114er that we have in our county is the Mount of the Holy Cross.
So 14er, we know what that means. What does that mean?
Right. Yeah, that is a mountain that is over 14,000 feet tall.
It's interesting to me when I think of Kevin and I mean, we're certainly friends and acquaintances, but I mean, we're becoming much closer through the years. But every time I meet with Kevin, it's like God has downloaded the same thing in him that he's downloaded in me. So I'll say, oh man, it's amazing, this new thing. And he's like, oh yeah, I read that book. Or this new thing. Oh yeah, God was saying that to me as well. Like everything from our marriage to raising kids to the thing we're going to talk about today. It's really amazing how God has aligned our hearts and our vision for ministry. And I just think it's pretty amazing. So, hey, let's just jump into this thing. So tell me about this book. I'll hold it up to the camera. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
I was trying to remember how I came about it. I think I was listening to the Dad Tired podcast, which is one of my favorites after Ordinary Discussions.
Yeah,
obviously.
of course.
But I think it was his favorite book of the year, and I thought, it sounds good. I'll give it a shot. And man, it just spoke to me. I loved it. And I kind of wanted to say, first and foremost, I highly recommend reading the book. I have a pretty bad habit of reading or hearing something, getting super excited about it, and then getting frustrated when I can't convey the entire, however many thousand words it is in 2 minutes. And I always have to remind myself, there's a reason they wrote the entire book.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor and read it. I think that's the first thing I would like to say.
Yeah, I would say, we're going to reference a book a lot, and it really is not a book review. It's about what God put on our heart about the book. It's going to come across maybe as a book review of a sort, but it's really not. But I would say this book, you have to pick it up and read it. Don't just listen to the podcast and say, well, I got it from the podcast. Trust me, we're going to hit on if I hit every tab that I have in this book, you guys, it'll be like a 4-hour podcast. So trust me. And there's going to be things that I didn't tab that will speak to you. So you have to get the book and read it. For me, it spoke to, so it's interesting because this book it's a spiritual book, but it's also a self-help. Like it will help all spiritual books do this, of course. But a non-believer could read it and still get a lot out of it, even if you, But I believe for a believer, it's even more meaningful, way more meaningful.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to compare it to a non-Christian book, but it had the same impact on me, completely different effect, had the same effect as far as effectiveness on me as one of my favorite books, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I can't remember a time that I picked up a book and every single page I read, it was like somebody was taking it out of my mind, because I'm not very good at taking things out of my mind and putting it on paper, but taking it out of my mind and putting it on paper. And I was like, oh man, it was just complete confirmation of all these feelings I've been having.
Yep.
It was amazing.
Totally.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
What would you say that stuck out to you the most about eliminating hurry?
Really just the entire point of it, right? I love the way he presents this subject is, I think, in 2 ways. First, there's a problem, right? And then second, what is the solution, right? And so I think I've just identified in my life and in my mind and in my soul just the problem of a hurried life and of distractions and disturbance and the noise of the world. Yeah. And really just through this book, some really practical ways to avoid just the din of our culture and our hurried pace.
Yeah, same for me. I felt for years. I think one of the reasons that God moved us here, in the process, I didn't know all the reasons he was moving us. I'm still learning some of those reasons. And I'm thankful that he did, because I love living here. That's in the Vail, Colorado area. But he moved us from an area that was a suburb of Washington, D.C. And I know people, and I mean, it's not a comparison game. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't even know how you prove this or not, but everybody talks about Washington, D.C. or New York City or L.A. as being the most hurried, busy place. But I got to say, a suburb of those places may be even worse, because I had many friends that were driving 2 hours each way to get to work every day. It may only have been 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
45 miles, but it took them 2 hours in traffic.
Right.
So now they're turning an 8-hour workday into a 12-hour day. Then they're getting home and having to do all the things that everybody has to do in a city, where they just walk from work. So again, it's not a comparison. My point is, I came from an area that was extremely hurried, extremely busy, and everyone was trying to not only live this city lifestyle of keeping up with the Joneses and stuff, but then they're also trying to live this perfect picket fence family lifestyle as well, where they get all their kids to all their sports events, and you can't just do one sport event. You got to do 3 different sports events, and then you got to add all these other things to it. Before you know it, they spent half their life in a car in traffic.
Right.
And so it started weighing on me. I came from a small town in the Midwest. And so after a while, I just realized, wow, this is really not who I am. And it started weighing on me, but I didn't realize how much so until I came here and started living a much less hurried life. And what that allowed, and this is what we're going to talk about today, the problem with a hurried life is that we don't hear from God with a hurried life, and it goes against the grain of the lifestyle that God, or Jesus, let's say, that Jesus modeled for us.
Right.
And so when we go against the grain that Jesus modeled, the book says we get what? He says you get splinters. Go against the grain, you get splinters, right? And I see people in life all the time. It's like you get splinters because, well, you're not resting. You're not doing the right things to hear from God and taking rest for yourself. So proof in my life is when I finally got to a place that I could get myself out of the hurriedness, when I could get myself out of the frantic pace that I'd created for myself around, especially business. Like I loved the deal. I loved real estate deals, and people knew that, and people knew my business partner and my business partner is still in the town, and he's still doing a lot of deals and such. But I couldn't say no. Like I got pulled in every direction.
Yeah.
And because of that, I don't think I was hearing the voice. I know I wasn't really hearing the voice of God. I came here, and in a matter of months, I start Ordinary Men. And I think if I was still there, I would never have started it because I finally got to the place that I could hear his voice.
Had some margin.
Yeah.
And some quiet.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me in the book, early on in the book, is he's talking about Jesus, right, and his lifestyle. And that's a big part of, I think, the point of the book is that, and we can get back to this and go in more depth if you want, but not just reading and studying the teachings of Jesus, not just, that's important, obviously, not just, there's a long list of things, right? But also imitating his actual lifestyle, which is something that he makes the point that the modern church kind of misses that side of things. And that really struck me as just super helpful and fresh. And the point that you look at throughout Jesus' ministry, what was the one thing that he regularly did, right? He would leave, right?
To rest.
Go and rest, go and pray, go and have solitude, go, even for 40 days, right?
Yeah.
And he's God. So if God needed that, right, as a human, maybe we do too.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, it goes back to there's commandments and laws that God gives us that we must follow. And as Christians, we a lot of times focus on those. But then what you were saying is we forget the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle is just as important. It never says get up. There's never a commandment that says get up every morning and spend time in the quiet place, secret place, whatever you want to call it, and spend time in the Word and spend time in prayer. That is never. There's no commandment that says you must pray every day.
Right.
Okay. But tell me somebody that has a Spirit-filled, impactful life that doesn't spend time with the Lord in solitude, quiet, in the Word and in prayer nearly daily.
Yeah.
I don't think it exists.
Mm-mm.
And so we have, to piggyback on what you're saying, we have gotten so commandment driven and rule driven that we have forgot this lifestyle that he also modeled. And there's a reason that he modeled the lifestyle he did for us.
Right.
I think it was, and I could pull it up, but for time purposes, Jesus came out of the desert for 40 days, came back, did a miracle, maybe telling this wrong, did some miracles, and then immediately he left again.
Right. Did some
to
healings.
go to solitude.
Yeah. Yep.
After 40 days.
And I loved his point about that too. And I tended to totally relate to what John Mark, the author, was saying about, when you look at when Christ went out into the wilderness for 40 days and was fasting and right before he was going to be tempted by the devil, right? And the thought that I had and that John Mark had was, man, what lousy timing, right? Like he's about to be tempted beyond reason, like, and the fasting and the wilderness and the solitude. The revelation there is, he needed, the Spirit led him out. He needed the 40 days of fasting. It was what one of the ways he drew his strength, right, was from that place of rest, that place of intimacy with the Father, that place of solitude, all those things.
Yeah. And so, of course, we're going to have a spiritual spin on this, but let's talk practical as well anytime we come across something that's practical. But I think the big takeaway is, if you want to live a life of fullness, eliminate hurry and busy out of your life. But beyond that, if you want to have a life that is effective in ministry and that is close to Jesus, you have to eliminate hurry. They don't go together. In fact, there's a quote from Willard that says, there's nothing else. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Right. And I don't know when that quote was, but it wasn't in the 2000s, I don't think. And it was probably in a time that hurry was much less of an issue than it is today.
Yeah.
And he's saying you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life because it's the greatest enemy to our spiritual life. And I can't tell you how many times, let's talk about ordinary men, ordinary women, because that's something that I can talk factual about. When I encourage people to spend time in intimacy, and think back to our group, and I'm not trying to, if you were in our group, you everybody knows I love you. Hey, part of ordinary men and ordinary women is high challenge, high grace. So we bring challenge. We're not afraid of challenge. Men love challenge. But one of the common themes of any group is that people struggle with the time and intimacy with Jesus, and it's normally because they have so many distractions and they don't have time.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing.
Right. Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. There was a quote I had highlighted that kind of speaks to this. It says, "What if God isn't absent or distant? What if we are just distracted by all the noise?" It talks about where our treasure is, right? And they make the point it's not just time and money, that attention is more important, as it's what leads to awareness. Goes on to say, awareness is critical. God isn't the problem. He's always there. It's our lack of awareness and attention that's the issue. We question his absence, but what if it's our fault? Yeah. That really hit me, because I have, like, to be totally transparent, I've had a problem with that. I've had a really hard time in getting into the quiet place and feeling the presence of the Lord and really just in prayer in general. And that really caused me to think and reflect. It's probably not God who's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as I was reading this book, I immediately thought to myself, I have to send this to every leader and mentor in ordinary men and ordinary women as well, because I do think that's the great, I hear that more often than anybody. I spend time in the quiet place, or I try to get into intimacy. I try to get into the Word, but I just feel like God's not present. And it's almost like this big theological question, like, why isn't God present?
Right.
And the reality is, God is not the issue.
Yeah.
God's presence is not the issue. Our presence is the issue, just what you were saying. Yeah. And it's because we have things like cell phones and to-do list and soccer games and hockey games and businesses and kids. And unless you decide and commit in your heart that you are going to ruthlessly eliminate that hurry, and even once you try, and we're going to talk about our tries, right, and my fails, even once you try, you realize like every step you take is peeling back an onion of another layer of hurry that, oh my gosh, I didn't even know existed in my life.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, this is definitely for your spiritual life, but just practicing it in the last, because I've just finished this book, I think a week ago, and I just started practicing some things in my life. And I had a couple days that I did better than others. The days that I did well, I mean, spiritually, yes, but just in overall life, I felt so much better, so much more successful, so much more relaxed. I even took my blood pressure. My blood pressure was as low as it's been. This is crazy. Oh. I mean, factual. My blood pressure was the lowest it's been in months.
Huh. Well, kind of going back to, what you were saying about, just things not being where we should be. He had a great quote from a saying that's in business literature. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And that one really hit me. Like whatever results you're seeing in your life, whether it's stressed out, burdened, whatever.
Yeah.
Your system is perfectly designed to achieve that exact result. Yeah. So if you want a different result, change your system, right?
That's right.
It just makes sense.
Well, it's interesting. I'm sure some people are listening, and I mean, I probably would be one of those people had I not read the book already and push back and say, well, I mean, it's easy for you to say, but I've got to get a lot done, and I can't do all that I have to do without hurrying, and a lot of this is good stuff. But when you read the book, you'll realize there's Harvard reviews, there's Harvard studies that show that the maximum amount of efficiency of work is like 50 hours a week. And if somebody works 75 hours a week or they work 50 hours a week, they get the same amount of productivity done, which is pretty amazing when you think about the way that Jesus modeled our lives. Is we're supposed to take one day a week off, the Sabbath. And if you look at 6 days of work, what does that look like? 50 hours. It's amazing, isn't it? And it just so happens to be that 50 hours is our max production. And anything more than that doesn't gain us anything. I mean, this is Harvard saying this. Is not some Christian review trying to support Jesus's ministry. This is from Harvard.
Yeah.
There were studies back in the day when we started having robots and more technology and computers doing things. And the big fear of that day. Do you remember what the big fear was?
It was a congressional committee, right?
What was the big fear?
They were looking ahead, and they basically said by the year, I don't know, was it by the year 2000?
Something like that.
Because of automation and everything else, like there would only be about 24 hours of a week of work for the average person.
Yeah, and they were wondering what people would do with all their free time.
That's right.
And do we have enough leisure activities to make people happy? Because they were afraid that people are going to need to golf, so all these computers and all these robots are going to do so much work that the average human's only going to have 24 hours of work a week. So that was a big concern for them. Well, guess what? We have more automation, more bots, more technology than we've ever had, and we're working more. Yeah. So it tells me this. It tells me that it's not a condition of need to get things done. It's a condition of believing some hype that you're only important if you're busy. About this time last year, we went on a hut trip. Again, not from Colorado. All this was new to me when I moved here. A hut trip, you literally hike, snowshoe up or skin up, meaning you're on skis that allow you to go uphill. Yeah, it's very weird, skis going uphill, but it happens. And so you go to these huts, these small cabins up in the mountains, and you just get off the grid. It's really cool. It's super amazing. But I was up there, and I started feeling very I don't even know how to explain it. I came back not feeling very melancholy. Depressed isn't the word, but almost like, man, I don't have any importance in life. I have enough time to go do this. I'm not busy enough. And somehow, like, people looked at me and didn't find value in me because I didn't have this busy, hectic life.
Yeah.
Right? It was like the most stupid thing in the world. Then I realized, wait a minute, this is what I've been working for my whole entire life. I'm finally here. And now I feel guilty about it and feel like I have no worth, because the world has caused us to believe if you're not busy out of your mind, that you're not busy, that you have no worth.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
I do. And I had written a note down, just, this wasn't necessarily from the book, but just as I was reading it, just thinking about how it's pretty tragic, right? That to me, that Christians your typical response, anyone, it's not just Christians, right? But you go to a church lobby and you ask, hey, how are you? Busy, right? Like that's going to be the answer.
I'm busy, brother.
And like you said, there's a badge of honor, right? that goes along with that. And having read this book and really sort of thinking and meditating on it for a while, I just think, man, what type of a witness would it be if invariably, if you asked someone who was a follower of Jesus how it was going, the response was, I'm rested, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I think that would be a huge witness to, as John Mark calls it, which I love, being an apprentice under Jesus. You look at, again, back to Jesus' life and his modeling, he was just never in a hurry. I love the story that he pointed out when Jesus is on his way, right, to help, I think it was help a guy whose daughter was sick and dying, or a friend, I forget what exactly was going on. But on the way, he got touched by the lady who had the condition of bleeding, and he just completely stops, right? And I don't think we know exactly how long that interaction took, but I think we have every reason to believe it took a while. Like he wasn't in a hurry.
Yeah.
And John Mark makes a point. Like I can imagine, you can imagine the guy who was trying to get Jesus to the place to heal the person. Yeah. Super frustrated, like tapping his foot, like, come on, man, we gotta go. And then while he's not hurrying, the person died, right? And super sad. It's okay. No hurry. He gets there, brings him back to life.
That's
Everything's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Jesus's life, and if you're a believer, then you believe that if you're a Christian, you believe that you should follow Jesus. I mean, if you're a Christian and don't believe you should follow Jesus, then we need to have a discussion. So we're going to say that that's clear. Jesus continually not only told and said, but he practiced solitude, rest, quiet time, a Sabbath. I mean, all those things were extremely important to him, and he just didn't say it, he did it. What have you done to eliminate hurry in your life, and what have the results been?
Sure. I would say there's two things that I felt like would be good to hit on today. One is technology, and just how to handle that, and the other is Sabbath. So I'll start with the technology side. I've always been kind of a gadget guy. I've just, always enjoyed the latest and greatest, whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, obviously there's blessings with that, right? It's fun. It's fun to have the new technology, and it can certainly improve our lives. But obviously there's a ton of distraction and disturbance that comes along with that.
Yeah.
And I think the thought that I'd had was that, since the beginning of the, what do we call that? 2007, when the iPhone came out, was the beginning of the digital age, I think is what they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
Since that time, there have been leaps and bounds in technology, right? Where we've got the things strapped to our wrists and in our pockets, and soon to be on our faces with the glasses, whatever else is coming, right? But I think a lot of us are still living with our phones in the default setting, right? Meaning there are a number of things that you can do in settings to really limit the level of distractions and disturbance in your life. And so that's something that's been a big deal for me, and I've been really trying to tweak.
So how have you done that? Tell us practically.
Yeah. So practically, I have a few best practices. First is just being super intentional about notifications. Every notification is off.
Yeah.
Unless it's phone or text, right? Like I don't need to know the latest news story or the whatever thing.
You still allow text notifications though?
I do.
You do?
Yeah. I need those for work and for home. So those have to be available. The other thing, a lot of people don't even know you can do this. I told one friend of mine about it, and it was life-changing for him. You can keep the app from displaying the badges, right? The little red circle with a number in it, so how many emails you have. You can turn that off.
Yeah.
And for him, this friend of mine, it's like, man, this is unbelievable. Like I can pick up my phone, take a picture of my kid, and not know on a Sunday that I have 28 emails, and then be burdened by what are they, and get sucked into the machine again. So that little things like that, right? So manage your notifications. But first off, just be in control, right? Don't let your phone control you. Be in control of it. So turn those off. Turn off the badges if that's helpful. A list here. Let me see. For me, I have an iPad and a phone. On the iPad, that's just a consumption device or creation device. I don't need ever to be notified on that. So again, just sort of like thinking about what do you have, what do you need disturbing you. That was a distinction I thought of and read about between distraction and disturbance, which I think is helpful. We talk about being distracted, which is valid, but when you think about disturbance, that's pretty compelling. I looked up the definition, and it was the interruption of a settled and peaceful condition. So it's like, we talk a lot about, being distracted, eliminating that, but let's eliminate the disturbances, because those are literally, what did I say? Yeah. Unsettling your peaceful condition. That's a big deal. So the big one, and this was my exciting one recently, and this kind of ties into the Sabbath. My family and I we've just been committing to having that Sabbath day disconnected and phones down, all that stuff. But because of my work, I have to be reachable, right? If it's an emergency. So the first trick was, there's a do not disturb setting on your phone, right? Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Takes care of everything, except sometimes I need to be disturbed.
That's right. Right? Family emergency or work emergency. Or if there's a flood at the job site, fire, whatever it is, right? So I need to be reachable. So do not disturb, you can go in again, drill down into those settings, figure it out, let your favorites automatically call through. You can also set it to, if somebody hangs up and calls back again. Yeah, within a certain amount of time.
Then it'll break through. And so that's a great setting, but I realize not everyone knows that. So figure out the solution to that. Change my voicemail. Hey, this is Kevin. Leave a message. If it's an emergency, hang up, call back to break through the do not disturb setting.
That's really good.
Boom, right? Yeah. So that's done. So now I've taken care of phone calls. Then I thought, oh no, what about texts? I still have to be, oftentimes the property manager will send a text on a Sunday and I have to know what's going on.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, okay, there's no auto response for text. What are we going to do? So I had a brainwave. I was pretty proud of this one. There's the do not disturb while driving setting.
Yes.
Right? So you can manually turn that one on. It has nothing to do with driving if you just do it manually. Then you go into settings and you find the default response, and it will auto respond whatever you would like it to. For me, it says my phone is currently in do not disturb mode. And then it follows up with another text saying, if the call or if the text is urgent, please text back the word urgent to push your message through. So,
and you in the setting allows that word urgent to push through?
It does.
And that's in the settings.
And that's in the settings. So that beautifully takes care of text messaging. And then I go a step further, again, because I'm kind of a gadget guy. I have the watch, right? The Apple Watch. And that allows me to leave the phone away, and I'm reachable now for emergencies only by phone or text on my watch.
So let me break that down. So you have it on do not disturb. Somebody calls you. The voicemail says, hey, leave a message. My phone's on do not disturb, but if it's urgent, call me right back. It will break through. Boom. Now, anybody that's not urgent, if it's just me saying, hey, do you want to have coffee tomorrow? You can check it whenever you check it, your set times during the day that you check your phone messages. Yeah. If it's urgent and I'm like, whatever, I can get right through to you. And the same thing with the text message, but you do that through the driving, do not disturb driving.
And you can add, if you go to control center settings on the iPhone, I don't know about Android, but I'm sure it's real similar.
I mean, I don't think anybody with an Android is even listening. That's a good point. They're probably not Christians.
You just go into settings and look at...
Chris Delmonte, if you're watching this or listening, that's for you, buddy.
Check out the settings, and you can add a quick link on the swipe down control panel to turn on and off that do not disturb while driving.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about setting it up that way is it puts the onus on the caller or the texter to decide whether or not it's urgent, right? Because we live in a world where nobody really considers the other person, I don't care what time it is, I need to know, right?
Yeah.
But now you get the response and they have to think, okay.
Well, now they feel like a schmuck. If my urgent message is, hey, do you want to have coffee tomorrow?
I don't know if it's urgent. And I love the fact that you're just turning it back on the person. Like, is this urgent?
I love it. So for me, and we can talk more about your stuff too. I've added some things to my life recently. Mine are pretty quick. The do not disturb feature, which you talked about, I have. One of the big things I was doing, which was terrible, is the very first thing I did, and I can't even believe I do this. And I found myself do it again the other day right before bed. It was so stupid. But right before bed and right as soon as I get up, the first thing I do is pick up my phone and check text messages or new emails.
Do you have a phone in your room?
It's my alarm clock.
No, see, there's where you're going wrong. Get yourself, there's this thing they have, right?
I know, it's called an alarm clock.
It's called an alarm clock.
Well, here's my solution.
Like $10.
Here's my solution. I have my phone on do not disturb now, and now I just tell myself, I turn off my alarm and I don't check it.
Yeah.
I have to have some level of self-control, right? Now, if I lose that self-control, then I have to go to an alarm clock, and I'll tell myself that. But what I've done is now, for the last week, I leave my phone, second I get up, turn off the alarm, leave it right where it is. It's on Do Not Disturb. I go do my quiet time. I'm normally done with quiet time. I start around 6. I'm normally done around 7:30 or 8. And that's the first time I see my phone. And let me tell you this, fact. Nobody can argue with me because it's my life and it's fact. My quiet time has been so much better this week just doing that one thing, because when I think, well, I'm just going to check the weather for 2 minutes.
Right.
I'm just going to make myself a note. Now I keep a sticky pad, which I always did, but instead of the sticky note pad, I always went straight to my phone. Now I just have a little sticky note pad that I write myself notes to get things out of my mind so that I can concentrate back on God. And the other thing I found, and not everybody has this ability, I get it, but I work from home and I'm a business owner and my schedule is a bit flexible. So if I start at 7:30 or 8:30 in the day, it's usually not a game changer unless I have a morning meeting, which that's quite a bit. But what I found was, since I don't have my phone there reminding me of the time, my quiet time went a half an hour longer. And not because I was like being dogmatic about it, because I wanted to spend more time with Jesus. Right. And I didn't have this distraction telling me I couldn't. So that was one small thing, but a big thing. I now put my phone in I have a reminder on my phone to tell me to put my phone in my room on charge at 5:30. So at 5:30, my phone goes in my room, and if I want to check a text message or if I want to check an email, I have to physically walk in the room, and I have to sit on the edge of the bed while everybody else is in the other room, and so it causes me not to do it. I still do it about once a night just to make sure if my buddy's texting me, or, I like to chime in on text just like anybody else does.
It's good to know that you are absent, right?
But
it's good to be, I think, in a separate room.
Now I'm controlling it. It's not forcing me to, and it almost felt like it was forcing me. So those little things. Then little things like this. I'm agreeing to drive the speed limit. I know that sounds silly, but it's like my friend, I mentioned his name again, Chris Del Monte. He's an Android guy, but he's still a good guy. He says it all the time. Driving the speed limit or driving 5 to 10 miles over, unless you're going a really long distance, gets you there like the same time. Right. And then the other thing I committed to do, these are some of the recommendations in the book, is to drive in the slow lane, not always try to be in the fast lane. I know these are silly things, but it changes your mindset. It does. Another is when I'm in line at a checkout line and there's a shorter line next to me, I don't just jump in the shorter line, because I'm the guy that I'm always looking. As soon as they open a new line, I'm like sprinting to it to make sure I'm the first in it. I'm just making myself eliminate hurry. Then I'm trying to check emails less. I'm trying to say I check it in the morning and I check it in the afternoon, and in between I can get work done. And man, I have found that I've actually got some deep work done that wasn't just surface level work today, this week. There's others that are slipping my mind. They're on my phone and I'm videoing on my phone, so I can't pull up the list. But just little things like that. I know another one. I'm committing that once a month, I'm going to spend 1 day in solitude. And that means I'm going to leave my phone in my truck. I'm going to drive to a mountain. I'm going to hike, in the spring. I don't know what it looks like in the winter yet. I'm going to drive to the mountain. I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to hike, and I'm going to spend all or most of my day there, and with no technology. I like it. And I'm going to practice solitude. And so that's things I do. Right. I just don't do them without technology. And so there's just I'm excited about it, because just doing it this 1 week has really, I felt like, changed my week in a big way.
That's awesome.
Comer mentions 4 ways to combat or to ruthlessly eliminate hurry, and one of them is silence and solitude. The other is the Sabbath, practicing Sabbath. The other is simplicity, and the other is slowing. So I want to talk about all 4 of those. I do know this: without solitude, it's impossible to live a spiritual life. If we're not setting aside time to listen to God, then we're just not going to live a spiritual life. And so I think it's really important. And that's that's our core value, and our number one core value is intimacy with Jesus and ordinary men. That's why I think it's so important, because intimacy with Jesus requires solitude and silence with him. Yeah. And so by practicing that first core value and what we talk about, you're already practicing silence and solitude. And again, it's what Jesus modeled over and over again.
That's what I was going to say. It's just what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. And this is what's I hate, but I love in a funny way, how the world hijacks Christian values and makes them their values. Like it's like they'll call it Buddhism, or they will give it to any religion but Christianity, right?
Right.
And so this new buzzword now is mindfulness, which is solitude and silence.
Yeah.
Minus Jesus, right? Yeah. They're missing the best part. And this is amazing. I checked my email before you came. Telling on myself. Sure. It was outside of my scheduled time. But I checked my email, and guess what I had from Starbucks? It was a email that says, practice mindfulness with a cup of our coffee, or something of that nature. But it was practice mindfulness in all caps. I thought, man, how appropriate is that we're about to do this podcast on being mindful.
That's funny.
And the world is using this term, and everybody in the world is acting like it's, meditation, it's so important now. Proper breathing, so important now. Yoga, all these things about mindfulness and meditation. But they're missing the one thing that matters most. But they're still seeing benefit from it, because when you follow the life of Jesus, you're going to see benefits. Yeah. But you're going to see greater benefits if you include him in it.
There's such a huge tension there, I think, between, just like you said, there's something in us that deeply desires to be mindful and to be in communion with God, right? But then the world and the noise is pulling us the other way.
So that's silence and solitude. Then he says practicing the Sabbath is really important in eliminating hurry in our lives. Yeah. So you took that quite serious, which I think we all should. I'm struggling with taking it serious. You have. Tell us about your Sabbath.
Yeah, so we've just kind of committed. We're excited about it, and it's been hugely beneficial. We shut down Saturday night, right around sunset, and we don't turn things back on until, I'm in the do not disturb, that whole setting. But we come back online reluctantly on Sunday around sunset again, and it's been really super cool. Something happens in the family, something happens in me personally when I'm not able to reach for the phone, the iPad, the whatever it is, right? The soccer game on TV. I'm in a place.
Football. We watch football here.
Yeah, you do that. I should have said football. It's the same thing.
No, it's very different, but go ahead.
and so, just as an example, I remember one day specifically this summer, and it was 11 a.m. on the Sabbath, and I'm laying in a hammock in the backyard, which is just amazing, beautiful day, absolutely nothing to do, just in the middle of this book, super excited about rest and restfulness, and I'm just lying there bored, which is awesome, right? When's the last time you were bored? And then my 6-year-old comes up and says, "Hey, Dad, will you do this with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like I absolutely wanted to do it. And I'll be honest, right? Like there's times when your 6-year-old asks you to do stuff and you're like, I should do that.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So it was just such a cool difference, right? It was a different feel on that day when he asked me to spend time. And that's just one small example, but it's, just picking up the Bible or a Christian book that I'm reading instead of Instagram or Facebook, right? Like I think limiting yourself to those constraints, there's just, I don't know what that does, but it just forces you into what you should be doing and what ultimately is the better thing.
So how far have you gone with it? Because this may encourage, some people may listen and be like, but it's interesting to hear somebody that's gone pretty far with it and that can attest to the benefit of it. Have you got to the point that you don't buy anything on this app? I mean, I know you're not.
We're kind of
this for anyway. You is not a. I know Kevin well. This is not a legalistic thing. This is a elimination of hurry thing, and he knows by doing it, he follows Christ.
Since you brought that up, I had a great quote on legalism, and I think this is important. In the book, John Mark just talks about how this is a quote from him directly. He said, "These disciplines are how we follow Jesus, but like all habits, they are a means to an end. When the spiritual discipline, like Bible reading, Sabbath, etc., becomes an end, you've arrived at legalism. Therein lies death, not life. The end is life to the full with Jesus. The end is to spend every waking moment in the conscious enjoyment of Jesus' company." And I love that, right? Because that's it, right? If I'm just doing Sabbath because I need a rest day, like, okay, fine, right? But that's not the end goal. The end goal is closer intimacy with Christ. So as far as legalism goes, I think as long as that is on our minds and that's our focus, then we're good, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't have to take a Sabbath. And I love the point on that is, Jesus hits this pretty dead on with the Pharisees, right? They're confronting him about the Sabbath, and he says to them, "Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." Mm-hmm. And back then,
that's Mark 2:27.
Thanks, good job.
I had it written down. I memorized it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So back then, right, the important thing for the Pharisees to hear was the second part of that, right? But there aren't too many of us, being overly legalistic about the Sabbath now. So what we need to hear is the Sabbath was made for man. Yeah. And he goes into detail about how in the creation story in Genesis, God blessed three things. He blessed the animals, he blessed man, and then he blessed a day, which is crazy, right? Why would he bless a day? And the point, or what John Mark, his theory on that is, out of those three blessings comes procreation. And there's the animal kingdom that will procreate. There's the kingdom of man that will procreate, and then there's actual healing and recreation that comes out of that day of rest. Yeah, and I love that idea. And it kind of makes me think again about Jesus. And for a long time, I thought about a lot of the miracles Jesus did, especially the healings, were on the Sabbath. And I thought, man, is he just kind of poking at the Pharisees? Is he just trying to make, he's just trying to get them, right? And then I realized, no, that's the whole point, right? Is that the Sabbath is there as a day when God heals.
Yeah, that's great.
So when God was literally here, what did he do? He did healings.
Yeah.
So I love that.
So Sabbath for me, you can't argue someone's reality. The reality for me is I started taking Sabbath early in my life to the point, well, I won't go that far back, but definitely in business, my business partner and I made a decision that we weren't going to work on Sunday. Now, not necessarily the Sabbath that he promotes here where you don't do anything, you kind of get aside. And I'm challenged to try that. Mm-hmm. But I at least set aside a time that I didn't work. And if I did check emails, I didn't respond to them, which is stupid that I even would check them. I don't know why I would do that. But to the point that we bought a car wash, and not having a car wash open on a Sunday is almost suicide. We decided not to do it. And God really blessed us with that car wash. I recently sold it and did really well on it. And we did really well on it the whole time we owned it. And so every time in my business practice that I have decided not to try to promote myself and my earnings on a Sunday, God has always blessed me immensely for doing that. Fact. And so I can tell story after story. So now I'm really challenged after I read this book is like, well, what else could I do on Sabbath to bring God's blessing in my life? And don't get me wrong, I don't think we do things for blessing per se. Right. But like when he says, do this and you'll be blessed, we'd be crazy not to do it. And so now I'm challenged to say, well, what does it look like if I don't do I have no electronics on Sunday? What does it look like if I don't even go out to dinner so it costs somebody else to work on a Sunday? What does it look like if I really start practicing a Sabbath in a little different way? And I'm excited. That's where I'm not there yet as far as the ruthless elimination, but I'm at least thinking through it. Yeah. And I think just keep asking the question, what am I becoming because of this, right? Am I becoming more Christ-like? Am I, with anything that I think that we do, any spiritual practice, that's a great question to ask. What am I becoming because of this? Yeah. And the other thing he points out is the Sabbath is a great way to help us fight consumerism and the need for more. He actually says we live with chronically unsatisfied desires, like an itch that no matter how many times you scratch doesn't go away. No matter how much we see, do, buy, sell, eat, drink, experience, visit, etc., we always want more. And sometimes when you actually take time of not allowing yourself to have more, you realize that more isn't really what you want. It wasn't really what you wanted all along. Right. And so I think that brings us into the next point. Unless you have something on that. I'd add one more quote, if you don't mind. I love this one. This is from a guy named Dan Allen. It was in the book. And he says, the Sabbath is an invitation to enter delight.
The Sabbath, when experienced as God intended, is the best day of our lives. Without question or thought, it is the best day of the week. It's the day we anticipate on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and the day we remember on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. It's the holy time where we feast, play, dance, have sex, sing, pray, laugh, tell stories, read, paint, walk, and watch creation in its fullness. But I love that quote, right? And for us, that's been like that whole big picture of the Sabbath. It has been truly entering into delight. And it's not perfect, and we're not, whatever. We're doing it to the extent that we feel led to, and it's been great.
You know what? You guys are living on purpose, not on accident. And that's a big deal. And I see that with your life in a lot of different ways. Yeah. I mean, think about Kevin. So Kevin is a business owner. He's a father. He's a husband. He's leading an ordinary men's group. I'm sure he's got a million other things going on, as any father would or husband does. And now they're adopting a child.
Or two.
We'll see. Well, I can guarantee you, if you had not done what's in this book, well, I don't know if I can guarantee you. Let me ask you.
Yeah.
If you had not done what's in this book, if you had not started eliminating hurry in your life, do you think you could have got to the mindset that you had time to adopt a child?
Yeah, probably not. I think for me, margin is a big thing, right? I really long for more margin in general, and I think having had some in the last year probably put me in a mental place to be open. It was my wife was the one who kind of led the early charge on adoption, but yeah, I was on board, after not too long a period of time.
I think it's amazing.
But yeah, so I think having that margin, having that little bit of slowness that we've been able to get has been pretty critical.
Well, and hearing the voice of God, I feel like I say, that journey with me and you, we were both on an Ordinary Men this year. I mean, from the beginning until the end, that 12-month journey, I just felt like the Lord spoke to you more and more and more along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know that came from a lot of these practices. Mm-hmm. Margin is the difference between our load and our limit. Mm-hmm. And so if you're listening, I would ask you, what is your margin?
Yeah.
What's the difference between your load and your limit? I would say for many people listening, it's a negative. Mm-hmm. Their load is greater than their limit, and that's why they are spinning in anxiety, and that's why they're having panic attacks, and that's why their life seems miserable, and that's why they're thinking about suicide, and all those things. That's why this podcast is so important to me, because it's not just about having a better life. It's about living a life that is satisfying, not only in the sense of like, man, I want to get up in the morning and I'm happy to be alive, but in the sense that I can now hear the voice of God, and I can now feel like I have a relationship with my Lord and Savior. And I think so many people are living at that negative or zero margin.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you go through life. I do know how. I went through life that way, and I was angry, and I wasn't loving, and I was all those things that I read at the beginning of the podcast. Right. I think I could probably check the box on all 10. I was vacant from God, and it's just not a healthy way to live. And I've seen both sides of it. And so that's why this podcast is so important, because I just want to see people grasp a hold and see that there's a different way of doing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the next one is simplicity. So he talks about, so we have silence and solitude is a way that we combat it and we ruthlessly eliminate it. Practicing the Sabbath. And there's so much to say about the Sabbath. As I was going through this book, I was looking at quotes, like we could talk about it for 2 podcasts.
For sure.
So you guys got to pick up the book and read it. Simplicity. And so simplicity is as simple as, simplifying your life. It can be around things. It can be around activities. It can be around a lot of different things. For me, I read a book, and he actually quotes the guy in here, Joshua Becker. It's a great book. It's on minimalism. But his definition of minimalism isn't about just removing things from your life. I loved it, because it's actually the opposite of what I thought of minimalism. It's promoting the things in life that matter most and eliminating anything that distracts from it. So if you're listening today, I would say, what do you need to simplify in your life? For me, it was a lot of things. Like for example, I had to decide what things at the time, I'll just use my examples. I had an old 4-wheeler that was like needing repair a lot. I had a 1970s Bronco that was super sweet and I loved it and it was restored. But every time I got in it, it wouldn't start for some stupid reason. And then I had an old bass boat and it was on the verge of possibly going kaput any second, and it needed repair as well. And so for me, what did I think mattered the most? Well, the Bronco didn't really matter, so I eliminated that. Okay. The 4-wheeler, I needed it for the things that I really enjoy, so hunting and all. But I wasn't going to have an old broken one that was going to take my time. So instead, I promoted that thing. I got rid of the old one. I got a new one, so I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to worry about it getting it serviced all the time. And then the same with the bass boat. So that sounds like, well, you just added 2 things to your life. I did, but I added simplicity through it. I also went through my house and got rid of a lot of things. So that's an example of adding. Most of it was about subtraction. That's things. But I think people need to look at their lives as well, which I have. This is one thing that I've done ruthlessly. I've ruthlessly simplified my life. And ask yourself, like, what are you doing with activities and things? Like, why are you running your kids to Denver and Colorado Springs in the same weekend? Like, is that really promoting the thing that matters the most in your family's life? Or is it about being together? And I'm not judging people for it. I'm just saying you need to ask that question. If every Sunday you miss church because your kids are in soccer or your kids are in hockey, I don't know. I mean, what do we teach?
Football.
Or
you
football.
Skipped over football.
Well,
I was very clearly.
Football, you don't normally play. You don't know a lot about American football, but American football is normally played on a Friday or Saturday.
Oh, is that right?
So you don't normally have to miss church for it.
So it's a more spiritual
It's a more spiritual game.
All right.
But my point is, I know I sound preachy right now, but my point is I think people go through life and they forget to eliminate the things that don't really matter, and those things are costing them what really does matter.
And I think taking that what matters for me to the next level is asking that same question: what am I becoming? Right? By doing this, who am I becoming? And if it's more like Christ, or more, more of a family man, or more whatever, right? Just what is it? Just look at it and ask the question: who am I becoming because of this activity or of that bass boat, or being a fan of this sport with grown men with pads and helmets? Yeah,
but I will challenge people. I think we have a real problem with life and the hurry of life around sports. And I'm seeing it often, and it's something that I won't address personally with people, but I'll just say it here. Man, when we miss 70% of the Sundays of the month going to church, so that we can go to sports and sporting events that our kids are participating in, that just didn't happen when we grew up. Because when I grew up, my family and many other families, it was said, no, you have to put what's first, and then we'll fit the rest in. But what we've decided to say, we still say that. You're going to put the most important things first and then fit the rest in. But what are we telling our kids? That the most important thing is sports, and we fit church in around it.
What's funny is oftentimes on the Sabbath, there'll be, again, English football match that I'm interested in, right? I would typically, before we implemented Sabbath rest into our lives, I would have watched the 2-hour event, right? And so now I'm not watching it, but I'll come Sunday evening, when we're back, logged in and back on the devices, I'll pull up and watch the highlights. And literally in 10 minutes, I'm getting the whole game, all the best parts. And most of the time, none of the excruciating emotions you get with watching your team lose, right? Because I support a really bad team. But anyway, right? Like, so I would have sat there and wasted 2 hours of my day. And it was the highlights were great.
Yeah, and I think that's even taking it to another level of challenging yourself. What are you doing during the Sabbath? I'm going lowest level and saying, you can't even go to church because you're putting everything above it. Anyhow, I'm being challenging right now. I get it. But I've made the decision with my kids. Like my kids, I don't know. I've just, I think it's a dangerous game we're playing, and we better be careful.
Yeah, that's something, simplification. Yeah, we've done that too with kids. We've got 4 biologicals plus the 1 or 2 that are coming.
Non-biological.
That's right.
Yes.
Thanks. But we just realized that for us, driving around, trying to manage 4, 5, 6 kids is just, it's just not even a possibility, right? Like if every kid's doing an activity. So we've just told them, hey, look, we're going to do 1 per kid at a time. So, Josiah did soccer last fall, and then Sayla's doing dance right now, and then Jesse will do gymnastics, and Ash will do golf in the summer. And what's cool about that too is not only are we not hurrying around trying to figure out how someone's going to get where they need to be, we're all in it together, or we were back before COVID. But we would all 5 of us are there watching Josiah play soccer, and then we were all checking out Jessie, and her gymnastics routines. And, it's a blessing to have that margin and that slowness.
Yeah, and I'll say, for those that don't know me, they're probably thinking, well, that's easy for you to say, you just don't love sports. Well, let me explain something to you. Sports were everything to me, to the point that it became an idol. That's why I can say this. To the point that I would put it above everything, and that's how I can say this. I got a full scholarship to play football in college. It's not like I'm some guy that doesn't understand the idea of needing to be participating in a sport to be able to get to the next level and all those things. I get it as well as anyone does. Maybe not like an Olympic athlete or something, but I get it.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, there's no way I would ever, in this day and age, now that I've been through all the sports and even all the lessons it taught me and everything about, I'm never going to allow, I'm really going on a tangent. Whatever. Okay. I'm never going to allow my kids to think that sports are more important than their spiritual life. And if they don't become a great athlete and they have a great relationship with Christ, I can live with that. If they become a great athlete and they have no relationship with Christ, I can't live with that. Right. Because I have to stand before the throne and say, you're right, Jesus, you're right at the pearly gates. I put my kids being great at sports over them being grounded in you.
Right.
And I don't know what happens to the next generation when we're not putting kids in church on a weekly basis. And church can look different for everybody. I get all that, especially in this day and age, all these arguments about church. But I don't know if they don't have that practice and that habit, when they have the ability to make it themselves, I'm pretty sure that they're not going to church. But that's just, okay, let's move on. The last one is slowing. I think that one's pretty simple.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you have on that? What's your thought?
I don't know. I'm kind of going back to the word slow and how it's almost become a bad word, right, in our day and age. So just trying to flip it upside down, it feels like, I don't know, most of the times when you find a kingdom truth, it's the complete inverse of what the world would tell you.
Yeah. So he comes up with a lot of ideas about slowing. It's a lot of the stuff we talked about with the phones, not jumping lines, being willing to drive the speed limit, things like that. And the idea behind it is less about the thing you're doing to slow, and it's more about taking on the mindset that you don't always have to be in a hurry to get things done.
Right.
And so again, it's silence and solitude, practice the Sabbath, simplicity and slowing. It's quite simple, but you have to read the book to truly get it. This podcast certainly doesn't do it justice, but hopefully it encourages you to do so. Any final words before I wrap this thing up?
No, I just echo that. Yeah, I highly encourage reading the book. It's probably one of my favorite books I've ever read.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, as we come to a close, I'm sure what we're talking about is certainly a level of self-help, and eliminating hurry and busy from your life will certainly produce a more enjoyable life. There's no doubt. Even if you're not a believer in Christ, there's no doubt in my mind that practicing this will make your life more enjoyable. However, as we've talked about, this is the small part of why you should pursue doing this. The main reason is to live like Jesus lived. Because when you live like Jesus and the way he modeled, you can hear from him and you can hear his voice. You can grow close to him. And for some of you listening, I hate to say it, but maybe you're just too busy to be a follower of Jesus. Maybe currently in your life, to follow Jesus, to truly follow him, to emulate his life, maybe you're just too busy to do that. And that's okay. It's not a guilt trip. It doesn't have to stay that way. But my hope is that you'll pick up this book, or you'll take to heart some of the things you heard in this podcast, and it will encourage you to explore life in a new way, in a different way of living, one that will give you a better life, one that will, much more importantly, give you a life that allows you to be with and hear from God. So as we close, I just ask, what is God saying to you today, and what are you going to do about it? So until next time, let's do this. And thank you so much, Kevin. This was awesome. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.